All right, so we are on our main topic here, the idea of strategic discomfort. Now, what is that, right? So, and I kind of alluded to it initially in the intro. It's basically just this idea of doing hard things, but doing hard things in multiple different arenas in your life, right? So, you know how the SCAL method deals with your body, your soul, your heart, and your mind. So in this case, doing hard things, we would want to do hard things in all of those areas. And what does that look like, right? So, let me backtrack a little bit. Where did this one come from, right? Because I just recorded and just put out there episode 3, and that was discussing what a sound heart is, according to the S.C.A.L method, and how do you train it, and how do you do all this work to improve on your emotional well-being, your emotional self. And a thought came up and it was kind of confirmed with a following conversation that I've had concerning this method. And it was really came down to, who's really going to do all this work? And I thought it was pretty funny because, it's a valid question. And my response was kind of a fear as well, right? And my fear is that we've become so used to not doing this kind of work that it's going to seem almost impossible to make any real changes. And that's a shame. That's a shame, I think. So what am I saying strategic discomfort is here, right? And what does this have to do with the sound mind? And what am I saying? What I'm saying is, in order to get to that person, that better person, that person of great character, you're going to have to do hard things. No one is perfect. And I'm not saying that we're striving for perfection or anything like that. I'm not getting into that territory quite yet. But right now, what I'm saying is you're going to have to do some hard things. So we're kind of used to it physically, right? That's what working out is. Let me pull up just a little bit. I'm in America, and I've been afforded a very comfortable life. Most Americans have been afforded a very comfortable life, right? We live in comfort, whether that be because of technological advances, economic advances, whatever. We live pretty comfortably. And I think that we've become a little too comfortable, right? Things have now shifted in a way that we almost expect certain things to happen and occur, and we kind of expect not to have to work for them. Part of that mentality is also why things like Ozempic have blown up, right? So it was like, hey, for years they were saying there is no magic pill, but there's a magic shot. We're in some pretty risky territory, and I do have an episode coming up about all of these quote unquote injectables, and they've been around for a long time. Ozempic, this trend, this craze is not new. Especially look, I told you that I'm well into the bodybuilding world, so there's been stuff in that for decades. And even before that, peptides have been out for years, a long time. Steroids have been out forever. All this other stuff, like it's been out. It kind of alludes to the mentality that we have and that we're shifting to as a whole, right? And that's kind of why I bring it up. But let's get back to the strategic discomfort, right? So let's take our workouts, for instance. We have a workout, you have a plan, hopefully, right? You're not just jumping in and going, just throwing weights around or jumping around or running around or whatever. And that kind of speaks to it as well, because that's part of strategic discomfort. You have to have an actual strategy in place, right? There's a reason for doing this, for doing hard things, and you should be following along a particular pathway, a particular guideline, whether that is something that you came up with yourself, or whether a trainer did it for you and it's like, hey, here, or whether a trainer is walking you along this path hand in hand, whatever it may be. But you should have some type of strategy going into each and every workout. And then you should have an overall strategy, because that's how you grow, right? So the thing is, we don't grow if things get too comfortable. We don't grow if things get too easy, especially when it comes to different workouts, right? You have to, let's just take, again, going for the specific lean muscle tissue. The only way you're really going to gain lean muscle tissue is if you force your body to adapt. You have to force your body to adapt, to change. The only way you're going to do that is through some pain and through some discomfort, right? I don't want to lean into the no pain, no gain thing, but you're going to have to get a little uncomfortable, because the whole idea behind gaining lean muscle tissue is progressive overload. Those two words right there do not indicate comfort. They indicate discomfort. So you got to get a little uncomfortable in order to grow. So now let's take that, right? So I think you get the idea behind strategic discomfort as it pertains to your physicality, right? You want to grow the muscle, you got to work the muscle, right? You got to get uncomfortable, right? Sometimes that means a little bit of soreness here and there. Sometimes that means doing these workouts and lifting stuff, putting things up and putting them down when you don't feel like doing it. It requires different of you, right? And if you wanted to go outside of even the workouts, just doing hard things in general, right? Like there's this, I forgot his name, but he does a whole bunch of like ice baths and things like that. But he does like all of the modalities, which coincidentally I do often, right? I do the cryotherapy, I do the ice plunges, I do the saunas, I love all that stuff, right? And part of why I love it is because it's so hard. It's hard. Like there's nothing about okay, let's just stick with the ice bath. There is nothing about the ice plunge that I like. I don't like it at all. I don't like the cold, right? I actually enjoy the sauna. Turn that heat up all the way. I love it. But the cold, that is so difficult for me to do consistently. But I do, because the act, just simply the act of physically going to do something hard makes you stronger, right? And it might not always make you stronger immediately physically, but boy, does it do a job on you mentally. I mean, talk about some mental toughness, and you sit in that thing for 3 minutes and you're just frozen, right? There's something to that. There's something to that. So that's how you build up physical resilience. Because I mean, it has some really good physical benefits for all of those additional kind of like off the beaten path health modalities, right? There are some really good benefits to doing that, but there are also some really major mental benefits to doing that stuff as well. And I'm also going to be talking about that when we get to having a sound mind. But all that aside, you got to do these hard things because you're building up resilience. So you're building up physical resilience, but then at the same time, you're building up some mental resilience. So what does this have to do with a sound heart, right? I mean, because that's really where the thought kind of germinated, where it's just like, we can't run from doing the hard things. One thing that I know is quite difficult to do is to lean into fixing ourselves mentally and emotionally, right? So let me just stick with the sound heart portion of it, right? And remember, I said, in order to really train your emotions, you have to change your thinking. There's certain things and certain ways that you have to think. That requires work. And that requires getting uncomfortable, because at one point in time, you're going to have to look at your past. You're going to have to go over the things that you've been told, the things that you believed, you're going to have to go over all of that stuff. Most of the time, that's not easy work. because you also have to be consistent with yourself, honest with yourself. And there are certain things in certain situations in which, almost everybody has it, where it's just like, ooh, I wasn't the best here. You actually have to be willing to admit that. And that takes some oomph, for lack of better terms, it takes some oomph. Right? It's one of those things where you have to be almost used to it. You have to get used to getting uncomfortable, because growth almost always, real growth almost always requires struggle. And struggle is uncomfortable, right? So do the work. Face that stuff that you need to face. Say those things that you need to say. Go do those things that you need to do. Get stronger. Get tougher. I'm speaking from a father and a husband's perspective. I am charged with taking care of my family, protecting my family, and setting the environment for my family to grow and flourish. You don't do that without getting uncomfortable. So again, what I'm asking you to do here is to do those hard things. Go out there, invite those hard things, go conquer those hard things. Get uncomfortable, right? So it's just like, again, physically, do those hard workouts. Give max effort. Do those hard things. Do an ice plunge. Try it out. If you can physically handle it, like medically handle it, rather. Try a sauna if you can medically handle it. Try things like that will test you physically, because the more you get tested physically, the more you get tested in all the other arenas in your life. And that's how you really get to be better, right? Do the hard emotional work. Train your emotions. Change your thinking. Test your thinking. Become self-aware, right? Don't just fly off the cuff of every single little thing that happens. Actually analyze. Think about how you move. Think about how you operate. This is the hard stuff. Think about those things that you did in the past, or those things that happened to you in the past. Think about and question all of your beliefs. Everything that you think is solid and true, test it. Because the things that turn out to be actually solid and true can be tested, and they actually invite you to test them. Do this stuff. Take the time, put in the effort, put in the energy, get uncomfortable, because there and only there do you actually become better. Again, growth doesn't come without real struggle. You have to struggle against these different things. Sometimes it's struggle against yourself, because you are telling yourself, you hold on to certain things so hard. Take that time to dig into it. Take that time to break it down, to analyze it. Take that time to move past it. Take that time to heal, and then take that time to grow. Right? And that covers your physical work, the mental work, the emotional work. And I haven't really said much about the spiritual work, right? And the thing about that is, that's probably a whole nother topic by itself. But far too many people have become spiritually lazy, and they become spiritually comfortable, right? It was like, well, we're openly this, and we're doing this, and we can do all that and all this fun stuff. But nobody reads anymore. Nobody reads their Bible anymore. So you could quote 20 different verses, all of them wrong, and they, spot on, right? Just nodding and smiling and nodding. You're just like, okay, and then they go back to their regular lives, right? Nobody spiritually, when it comes to, at least, again, I'm talking from a Christian perspective, it seems like they've become quite lazy and afraid to do the uncomfortable stuff, afraid to grow, and they just don't put in the work. So and it's funny because I mentioned fear, I mentioned an emotion, they're afraid to do it, but they're not all afraid to do it. Some are just flat out lazy. They don't want to do it, and they won't do it. This gets in the way, that gets in the way. And a lot of others are so locked in, they white-knuckled certain beliefs. And I mean white-knuckle, I mean they hold on to them so tight that nothing can be said against it. And that's just as dangerous. Again, truth can be tested. Truth can be tested multiple times and still found to be true, right? If you're holding on to a belief and it can't be tested, you know, we might have a little problem here, right? And so from a spiritual perspective, a little discomfort goes a far way as well. That's also how we learn and grow, right? So that's what I have for you on strategic discomfort. Like, go out, do those hard things, okay? Go out, do those hard things, and reach out. And let's celebrate you doing those hard things. You putting in that work, you know, to become better, to become more resilient in all arenas. Let me know. I will be the first person to cheer you on. Like, let's go. Let's do this work, okay? Yeah, so that's what we have on strategic discomfort. Let's get to these random topics here, okay?